Someone reaches out. A text, a call, a simple, "Hey, how are you doing?" And it lands at exactly the moment you needed it. You're overwhelmed. You're exhausted. You're carrying more than you've said out loud. This is the moment. This is when support is supposed to help. And yet, something in you doesn't reach back. You read the message and don't respond. You let the call go to voicemail. You say, "I'm fine," when you are very clearly not fine. You find a reason to cancel. You go quiet. Right when going quiet is the last thing that would actually help. Later, alone again, something in you knows this didn't make sense. You needed exactly what was being offered, and you turned away from it anyway. This isn't a one-time thing for a lot of people. It's a pattern that shows up most precisely in the moments of greatest need, which is what makes it so confusing, because it would make sense if this happened randomly. If sometimes you wanted connection and sometimes you didn't. But that's not the pattern. The pattern is specific. The more overwhelmed you are, the more likely you are to withdraw from the exact people who could help carry it. Most people explain this to themselves in ways that sound like character flaws. I'm too independent. I don't want to be a burden. I just need space. I'm not good at accepting help. These explanations feel true. They're not wrong exactly, but they're describing the surface, not the mechanism underneath it. Because here's something that doesn't fit the independence story. If you were simply someone who didn't need connection, this wouldn't hurt. But it does. There's a particular kind of loneliness that comes from pushing away the very support you were craving. A loneliness made heavier by the fact that you did it to yourself, and you don't fully understand why. So this isn't a story about people who don't need people. This is something else. Something that happens at a level below the decision to withdraw. Below the story, you tell yourself about why. Because the body, your nervous system specifically, is constantly running a process you don't consciously control. A process that scans every person, every voice, every presence around you, and asks one question continuously without you ever asking it on purpose. Is this safe? And for a nervous system that has spent a long time under sustained pressure, overloaded, depleted, running on reserves it doesn't have, that question gets answered differently than you'd expect, even with people who love you, even with people who have only ever helped. The system can look at genuine support and read it as something it doesn't have the capacity to handle. Not because the support is unwanted, but because in that moment, even good things require something from you: attention, response, presence, energy. And the depleted system doesn't distinguish well between "this will cost me something" and "this is a threat." This is the beginning of understanding a pattern that has a name in the research. One that explains why connection itself can start to feel like one more demand on a system that has nothing left to give. And once you see this mechanism clearly, something that felt like a personal failure starts to look like something else entirely. A protective response, operating exactly as it was built to, just aimed at the wrong target. To understand why support can feel like a threat, we need to go back to a concept we touched on in an earlier video: neuroception. Neuroception is the nervous system's continuous, automatic process of scanning the environment for cues of safety or danger, happening below conscious awareness, faster than thought. This concept comes from the work of Stephen Porges, the same researcher behind polyvagal theory, and one of his most important contributions is the idea that neuroception doesn't just scan for physical threats, it scans for social cues too: tone of voice, facial expression, body posture, timing. Even the simple fact of someone needing a response from you, all of it gets processed instantly, automatically, as either safe or unsafe. Under normal circumstances, a nervous system with enough resources reads supportive people as exactly what they are: safe. But here's what changes everything. Neuroception doesn't operate on a fixed setting. It operates based on the current state of the system. A regulated, resourced nervous system can accurately read someone's warmth, someone's good intentions, someone's genuine desire to help as safety. But an overloaded, depleted nervous system processes information differently. It's not reading intentions anymore. It's reading capacity. And the question shifts from "is this person safe?" to something much more specific. Do I have anything left to give this interaction? If the answer is no, even a warm, loving, low-demand interaction can register as too much. Not because of what the other person is asking, but because the system has nothing left to offer in response. And here's the part that explains the withdrawal specifically. Connection, even supportive connection, is not passive. It requires something from the nervous system: attention, eye contact, emotional responsiveness, words, the vulnerability of being seen in a difficult moment. All of that is output. And an overloaded system operating in survival mode is not oriented toward output, it's oriented toward conservation. So when support arrives at the exact moment of greatest need, which is also, almost always, the exact moment of lowest capacity, the system does something that looks contradictory, but is actually perfectly logical from a survival standpoint. It treats the bid for connection the same way it would treat any other demand on its resources, as something to defend against. Not because connection is unwanted, but because, in that moment, even connection costs something the system doesn't have to spend. If this is helping you understand a pattern in your own life, something that maybe felt confusing or even shameful before now, consider subscribing to this channel and sharing this video with someone who might recognize themselves in it too. Understanding this doesn't undo years of this pattern overnight, but it changes what you're working with. You stop fighting yourself and start working with the system you actually have. Now, there's a specific response pattern that explains exactly what withdrawal looks like when it happens under this kind of overload. And it's not simply fight or flight. There's a third response, one that gets far less attention, but that explains a huge amount of human behavior under chronic stress. It's the response that happens when neither fighting nor fleeing is available. And once you see it clearly, you'll likely recognize it in more of your own behavior than you expected. Most people are familiar with fight or flight. Fewer people know about freeze. And almost nobody is taught about a fourth response, one that's particularly relevant to relationships and connection. It's called the fawn response. The term was popularized by therapist Pete Walker in his work on complex trauma responses. Fawning is a survival strategy built around appeasement and accommodation, prioritizing other people's needs, moods, and expectations as a way of maintaining safety. For many people, fawning becomes a primary mode of operating, especially those who learned early in life that connection was conditional, that love had to be earned through being agreeable, helpful, easy. And here's where it connects directly to withdrawal. A nervous system organized around fawning is constantly monitoring what others need from it, which means connection, for this system, is rarely experienced as simply receiving support. It's experienced as an exchange, an interaction with an implicit cost. Even when someone reaches out purely to help, a fawn-oriented nervous system may automatically calculate what will be required in return. Showing up emotionally, reassuring the other person that you're okay, managing their concern for you, performing wellness even while struggling. This is exhausting under normal circumstances. Under conditions of genuine overload, when the system is already running on empty, this calculation becomes unbearable. So the system does something that looks like rejection, but is actually a withdrawal response. The fourth survival strategy. Withdrawal isn't freezing in place. It's actively removing yourself from a situation the nervous system has assessed as more than it can handle, even when that situation is, on the surface, support. This is the mechanism behind the paradox we started with. The system needs connection to regulate. This is not in question. Co-regulation, as we discussed in the previous video, is one of the most powerful tools the nervous system has for finding safety. But the system also needs capacity to engage in connection. And when both connection and capacity are required at the same time, when you need support but don't have the resources to be present for receiving it, the system resolves the conflict by reducing the demand. It withdraws. Not because connection isn't needed, but because the version of connection that feels available, responsive, reciprocal, emotionally present, isn't something the system can currently produce, so it removes itself from the equation entirely. This explains something that confuses so many people about their own behavior. Why the withdrawal gets stronger, not weaker, exactly when the need for connection is highest. It's not contradiction. It's the same mechanism, scaling with the size of the deficit. The bigger the gap between what's needed and what's available, the more the system protects itself by closing the door rather than opening it. And this creates something painfully circular. The withdrawal that was meant to protect the system also removes the very thing, co-regulation, presence, support, that the system needed to recover in the first place, which means the depletion continues. Which means the next bid for connection is met with an even stronger pull to withdraw. Not because the person stopped caring, not because the relationship is broken, but because a protective mechanism designed for short-term threats got triggered by a long-term ongoing state of depletion and kept running long after it stopped being useful. So let's bring this together. You push people away exactly when you need them most. Not because you don't value connection, not because something is wrong with your capacity to love or be loved, and not because independence is simply who you are. It happens because your nervous system, under conditions of overload, stops evaluating people by their intentions and starts evaluating interactions by their cost. And connection, even warm, genuine, low-demand connection, has a cost. Presence, responsiveness, the vulnerability of being seen. For a system with nothing left to spend, that cost can register the same way any other demand would, as something to defend against. This is where the fawn and withdrawal responses come in. Survival strategies that, for many people, became the default way of managing relationships long before they had the language to understand why. What looks like rejecting support is often a system protecting itself from a demand it doesn't currently have the resources to meet. And this creates the exact paradox we started with. The thing that's needed, connection, is also the thing that feels unaffordable in the moment it's needed most. Not because the need disappeared, but because the capacity to receive it temporarily did. Let's go through the new concepts from this video, because there's a lot here worth holding on to. Social neuroception is the nervous system's automatic, below-conscious process of scanning people and interactions for cues of safety or threat. And this scan shifts dramatically depending on how much capacity the system currently has. A regulated nervous system tends to read genuine support accurately, as safety. An overloaded nervous system shifts from reading intentions to reading capacity, asking not, is this person safe? But, do I have anything left to give this interaction? Connection is not a passive experience for the nervous system. It requires output, attention, responsiveness, presence. And an overloaded system, oriented toward conservation, rather than output, can experience even supportive connection as a demand. The fawn response is a survival strategy built around appeasement and accommodation, often developed when connection was conditional on being agreeable or easy. For a fawn-oriented system, connection often comes with an implicit calculation of what will be required in return, which becomes unbearable under genuine overload. Withdrawal is a fourth survival response, distinct from fight, flight, and freeze, where the system actively removes itself from a situation it has assessed as exceeding its current capacity, even when that situation is support. And the paradox at the center of all of this, the system needs connection to regulate, but also needs capacity to engage in connection. And when both are required simultaneously without enough resources, the system resolves the conflict by withdrawing, which removes the very thing that could have helped it recover. This is not a character flaw. It's not a sign that you don't know how to be close to people. It's a protective mechanism built for short-term threats, running on a long-term, ongoing state of depletion, doing exactly what it was designed to do, just at the wrong moment, aimed at the wrong target. But understanding the mechanism is only part of this, because withdrawal doesn't just happen in moments of obvious overwhelm. For a lot of people, it shows up in something much quieter and much harder to notice. It shows up the moment someone gives them a compliment, the moment someone offers care, the moment someone simply pays attention to them in a positive way. And instead of relief, instead of warmth, there's a flinch, a pulling back from something that, on paper, should have felt good. Why receiving good attention can trigger the same defensive system as receiving criticism is what we'll go into next. Because for some nervous systems, being seen, even warmly, can feel like being exposed.